Hello viewers. For those of you who follow the channel and know, recently acquired this little guy in the middle here. I thought we would do a neat video comparing, this may not really make any sense, but doing a video of kind of drawing from the influences that this little guy has taken to being in existence. I know, kind of a little bit of a fantasy, but a little comparison video is always fun. I love to do them, and I love the comments, and I love the discussion around it. So here we go. For those of you who have followed the channel, I have done numerous videos with Edison, McCra Edison fans, Toastmaster, whatnot, all different variants. And those who know the story know that that's really my childhood. Like the earliest memories I have is especially the one on the right. Unfortunately, that one, the one that I remember as a kid, has been long since gone. In fact, we had 3 of them, and in the video, if you go back on the channel, in the video, I explained the whole story, how we had 3 of them and why and all that. So fast forward to now, I've talked about before where I have, I think maybe a half a dozen of those Comfort fans, and my goal is to collect every variant. There's 2 that escape me, the infinite speed one, and I know a couple of people in the Facebook groups know I've been looking for them and occasionally point them out to me when they come up. And then the version with the Venturi ring. I thought I had one of those, but I don't. I probably dreamt about it. Thin and light on the left. This is just one of the several variants I do have. I have a few of these with the plastic front guard, but I also have, I think 1, if not 2, I think 2, with the metal front guard. And I often wondered if those were used in more of a commercial application versus the plastic guard, or if it's just differentiating them by years. I also have a rare one with the translucent blades, but still everything else is the same. Translucent blades with the metal grills on both sides. Just showed a video of that one running at night recently. It looks really cool. And then that led us to this 10-inch one. I did a video on that, explained what I really think about these smaller fans. This is the only one I have in my collection right now. I kind of stayed away from them. I had one years ago when I was a kid, an Eastern Electric, but then with this one in the middle, a lot of these Edison 10-inch, 12-inch, 14-inch, whatever they're billed at. This one was billed at 10 inches. Didn't read it, didn't measure it. But if you look, it's taller than halfway up on the cabinets on the 2 next to it. So I would say it's a 12. If I'm just mentally holding a ruler up to it, something like that, right? However, in the video for this fan in the middle, I talk about typically when you see these out there, they have the full-size Edison motor stuffed into them, and they have the faux wood sides, and they still have the translucent blades, all of that. I think they have a black guard. This is like a gray. And then I saw this one, and if you check out the video on that one, it's really like a mini-me. It has a smaller motor, but it's set up just like the bigger one. It's cool. I won't go on and on about it because I do enough of that in the actual video for that fan. All right, so let's compare them now. Let's try to see where they kind of drew their influences from. So I guess we'll just logically start at the top. So the switch, it has this switch. I don't know what you kind of call that switch versus more like a knob switch, but it has this switch. So the thin and light has all the controls in the center. Switch, obviously the handle's in the center. I point out in the Edison Comfort fan video that we've done, one of the things that is a struggle if you use this in the window with it pulling in air is that the switch is off center, so the window has less real estate. Ironically, the real estate that it has to sit on is probably all you get these days with like a modern Lasco 3733. I would never compare this to that. That doesn't hold a candle to something like this. Where if you have it on exhaust, which I typically do, and I talk about that in other videos, you have a giant spot. So this, like the thin and light, has it in the center. Now Edison has different variation colors of handles. I've actually seen comfort fans with lighter colored handles. I've never seen a comfort fan with this type of switch, but I've definitely seen a comfort fan with that color as a knob or switch, whatever you call it. So in terms of the actual cabinet, so it's wider. So I have them. See, I don't know if you can see that in the camera without me turning them sideways. Nah, you can kind of. So it's clearly wider, right? And that's the funny thing. Well, I guess if it was, you use the same kind of thin cabinet as a thin and light, it probably would fall over all the time. Although it's short and squat, so maybe not. And this thing is super light. Although it's probably heavier than a 3733. It just feels really light. It looks heavier than it actually is, probably because of the cabinet. So while it has a wider cabinet, it's about the same width as the comfort fan. It has this, I mean, this is more rounded, more severe, but it's more rounded like the thin and light. So it kind of takes, if you will, the inspiration for the cabinet from both fans. The width from the comfort fan, the soft, kind of rounded edges from the thin and light. The thin and light, which I often like with the thin and light, they have these creases in the cabinet. The little guy has creases, but they're more pushed out to the edge. So that's similar, where the comfort fan is just all one all the way around. Now the grill, the guard, the grill, whatever you call it. I guess guard if it's plastic, grill if it's metal. Technicalities. So, what I've always liked about Edison, Toastmaster, whatever, they have these longer slats. And I've always felt that these were, these are old, of course these are like 45 years old probably, but, and this one amazingly, are all in one piece, don't jinx it. I always liked that. I always liked the longer slats versus more slats, and they're smaller. I just like the look of it. So really, I think this, they're really the same kind of thing, longer slats. The color's obviously lighter, but it's not as light as the thin and light. So it's kind of a mix. It really is a mix. And if you want to get really crazy in terms of the bolts that hold this on, they look like they're closer in size. Now I could go get a socket and size them up, but it actually looks like it's in between. It doesn't look quite as big as these, but it doesn't look quite as small as these. You would think the thin and light, you would think this would be reversed. The thin and light would have the bigger ones, this would have the smaller. All right, the blades. 3-blade design, and I believe the version of this little mini fan that has the full-size motor, I'm going from memory from what I've seen online, I think it has similar, if not the same blades. Translucent blades. So it should kind of look like the comfort fan in terms of, what you're seeing with the lighting a bit. It is brighter. Actually, I have the blind closed there. When it's kind of uniform on both sides, you get this like gray, because it's like not sure what it wants to do. So its coloring comes from the comfort fan. The style of the blade comes from neither but it does have bigger actual blades on it. So that's similar to that versus the banana style blades that are on the thin and light. And then the hub, you have to really get your head in there. The hub, I mean, the hub is really its own unique thing because it's so small. So that, I would say that's neutral. All right, pretty cool. So now, let's just flip them around. Well, actually, you know what? Since we got them here, let's flip them around. We'll turn them back around again before we get done. All right, I go on and on about this in other videos. I've always loved the motor mounted into the grill. People will sometimes argue with me and say that's cheap, that's cheesy, I don't like it. Well, that's your opinion, this is mine. I just think it looks cool. I'm not gonna say anything else. There's no advantage, I think, or disadvantage. Although there is one, like if you're dealing with the grill and you wanna remove the grill, you have to like take the motor off the grill. I give you that. But with these metal grills, aside from painting them, and if you're going to the trouble of doing that, you know, you're probably painting everything. You don't really need to take them off because they're really easy to clean. You can just take a damp cloth, put it on your finger, and just kind of go through the bars there. All right. So what I mean by this thing has its own like downsized motor, I have seen these, and again, the most common versions of these actually have the full-size motor jammed in here. It's ridiculous. I'm 99% positive it's the same motor as this, just jammed in there. In this case, they actually made a smaller little motor, and I know I keep talking about this in recent videos. I need to get my meter out so we can measure the energy consumption on these fans and compare. So the grill, I mean, they're the same style grill, same way they mount. These look like just regular bolts holding that on, where these are almost like rivets, or no, they're not hex heads, they're like round, they're a pain to get off. That's how I know that one of these fans one of the ways I can tell that one of these fans have been reconditioned is if these have been removed and these have been popped out and been replaced with just regular bolts. So this fan, these three, the design is the same. The only difference is how this mounts. This has 4. And I often wondered why they went with 4. Not often, because I just got the fan not long ago, instead of 3. Why didn't they go with just 3? Save some cost. I don't know. But what I do know is, that these, when these nuts come off, these bolts to go straight through into the motor, so maybe it has something to do with the balance of the motor or just holding it steady. The one thing, it is very interesting, let's step back. This, where the shaft comes to the bearing out the back of the motor here, to the back of the motor, there's a little bend here. And I actually like that. Where this one is like, it looks like at the factory, they just like, somebody just like, oh, that didn't make it correct, pull it back, or it's rubbing. And what's also interesting is this one, unrelated to any of this, has a sticker on it that I've been trying to preserve on here that says factory service HD-12. I am curious what that means, if anyone knows. Like, did somebody say, oh, the fan's not working properly, and returned it, and it got serviced and got resold? I don't know. It'd be really interesting to know. And maybe, because it looks like this has been bent as an afterthought here, maybe something was going on, and they're like, oh, the problem is the metal bar is rubbing on the shaft, or too close to the bearing. We just gotta bend it out. I don't know, because if you go to the Toastmaster, Thin and Light, whatever, it's perfectly straight, but it's actually touching the motor. It's not touching the shaft here. So I could see a scenario where somehow that was rubbing and somebody just bent it out. But this one was designed that way. It almost looks like an old school face mask on those old school football players where they just have the bar, it just comes out. All right, so another observation, I mean the cord, I have seen Edison fans with different color cords, so that's not a big deal. Both these happen to be brown. It's interesting that Thin and Light's brown versus white. The motor, notice the blades, right? So this is kind of something I've made up, but the way the hub fits over these, you get the hub kind of snug. I know sounds ridiculous, but it's something I've made up in my mind since I was a kid. When that hub pulls over the motor, to me, it's like a collar, right? It's like a collar that pulls over the motor. So think of it as a collar, and the back of the motor, or the front of the motor, is kind of like the neck, and the collar pulls over. Once you put the blade on the shaft and push down, you know it's on when that collar is pulled tight, right? This doesn't have that. So these blades mount on here similar to like an oscillating fan, right? You have the shaft that comes through, and then it just like sits on the shaft. It doesn't pull tight around the motor with like the back of the hub or collar in my case. So that's different. So therefore, in the case of this fan, kind of rationalizing this, that could be why this cabinet is wider than a Thin and Light, because it is an exceptionally wide cabinet. If it had a traditional hub, back of the hub that pulled over the motor, then the blade wouldn't stick out as far, and it would start and probably end, not far after it starts now. So that could be why, from a design perspective, why the cabinet is wider. Interesting. The other thing to mention, well, the slots here are different. It just has two like literal slots, where those just kind of have the typical oval openings that seems like all motors have, or many box fan motors have, where these have slits. Now, because it doesn't have quote unquote that collar on the back of the hub, you can see all the openings on the motor that is access to free air coming through. So that's probably really good. So when it moves air through, it's keeping the motor cool. And let's also talk about oil ports. Sadly, unfortunately, as old as these fans are, they do not have oil ports. And more than anything, I hate taking these blades off. They are a pain to get back on. The reason why, and I don't know what the Toastmaster, but certainly the Comfort fan, many of the fans have a flat part on the shaft, and then you line up the hub, the center of the hub, and just put it right back on. This, and I don't know if it's a product of the blades being dark, you cannot find that flat spot on the blade. It may not even exist. I don't know. I have tried holding it up to the sun. I've tried everything. I've tried to use a little tool to feel around to see if I can find it. And in another video I have on not this fan, but one just like it, I have a problem with the blade slipping on the shaft. It was all because I wanted to oil it, right? And amongst other things with that particular fan. So these are brutal, and I wish they had oil ports. It's probably that and the switch. Dealing with the switch are my two least favorite things on these, disassembling the switch and putting it back, because that is also something I have a handicap with, and that's another video to talk about. So no oil ports leads to what I just talked about. This little guy, and I pointed out when we do a deeper dive into this actual fan in that video, has a little, you can almost touch it, yeah, I can touch it, has an oil port tube on the front side of the motor. super duper cool. So you don't have to take off the blades to get to oil them, to oil the shaft or the bearing. A little oil port. But the strange thing is, I cannot for the life of me figure out why there's not an obvious oil port on the back side of this fan. And in the video for this fan, I posed a question, does anyone know? It would be really good to know the answer to that question, or if I'm missing it. There's a slight opening here, there's a slight opening here, but I don't know if that goes to the wicks in here. I don't really know. The other option is to lay the fan flat on its face and or face down and put some zoom spout, like actually where the shaft meets the bearing, and just let it sit overnight. I have done that. I've done that with this. Problem is you're not doing the front of the fan when you do it that way because you don't have access. All right, well, I think we covered all the really the kind of differences. They both have, I'm trying to tell, like if these are replacement zip ties, if somebody's been in here before, if they removed it to do some work on it. But same design, comes up to the right. I did a video on a vintage precursor to this fan that has metal blades, and it actually has the wires coming up this side but coming across and up. So manufacturing changes over the years. All right, before we go, the best for last. Let's fire them up and see how they sound. Whoops. I've grown so accustomed to the wire coming out up here, but practically I hate it. I wish it came out. I wish they just would have done away with this, because I pointed out in fans that this is always a weak spot for failure, especially as these cords get older and older. They're baby everything. All right. So if you want to listen to startup sounds of these fans, and wow, this video is going on really long, but I'm having fun. If you want to listen to startup sounds to these fans, I recommend checking out each individual fan, where I kind of go into on the videos I have done for them, because this video will go on another 10 minutes if I start doing all that. So I'm going to start by cranking up this guy. So to me, if you know the sounds of these fans, and he's sliding, this is super, super smooth, and this is a smooth top, so he's moving backwards. If you know the sounds of these fans, this sounds exactly like the full-size ones. Last but not least, the big comfort fan. So while these are making obnoxious noise into the wind noise into the camera, I'm going to say thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like, comment, and start up the discussion, and we will see you next time.